Total War Warhammer 3 is currently in development, locked away deep within the bowels of Creative Assembly's Horsham HQ. And when it finally makes landfall, we'll be seeing some of the most powerful and over-the-top characters to ever grace any strategy game, many of them for the first time ever in video game form. Legendary Lords are the glue that holds this series together, the iconic characters that shape our campaigns and ultimately drive the narrative of this trilogy. Their visuals and implementation are incredibly important to the success or failure of Game 3. But thankfully, Warhammer Fantasy Battle has become a fantastic source of inspiration to draw from, and by delving into the source material a bit, we can already see the framework for this behemoth beginning to take shape. As the Ogre Kingdoms, Chaos Dwarfs, and Demons of Chaos make their debut, we'll be watching as monsters of living forge metal, earth-shattering artillery, and horrifying entities from the warp announce their arrival. And in the vanguard will be a whole host of new legendary lords to choose from. So, to introduce you to some of the new characters likely dropping sometime next year, we're counting down the most insane lord characters in terms of visuals, battlefield mechanics, and unique translation to the killing fields of this epic 3-game saga. These are the top 5 craziest legendary lords we will see in Total War Warhammer 3. And coming in at number 5, we have Scragged the Slaughterer, the Maw that walks, the living avatar of the ogre god that slammed into their homeland and forced their diaspora into the mountains of Morn. The ogres are a gluttonous race, unfinished in the mind's eye of the old ones, and cursed eternally by a never-ending desire to feed, and Scrag embodies this through and through, a mountain of muscle and blubber, and a child of gore, eternally on the prowl for bodies to feed into his cauldron, and blessings to bestow on the ogre peoples. He is the prophet of the Great Maw, the greatest Gordon Ramsay wizard in the Ogre Kingdoms, and the spiritual figurehead of their fragmented empire. Where Grease's Goldtooth plays the role of noble statesman and over-tyrant of all ogre tribes, Scrag is the religious bedrock, a traveling pope enacting the dreams and whispers of a gaping maw that quite literally almost swallowed their entire species whole. He has a pretty sad story. Accidentally boiled his tyrant's favorite Noblar alive, and as punishment, had his hands hacked off and eaten before being pierced with meat hooks and forced to drag his cooking cauldron into exile. He sought shelter in the dark caves of the Mountains of Morn, but was forced to fight for his life as the feral gorgers who lived there closed in for the kill. Channeling his inner Pudge, he jammed his cooking utensils into his wrist stumps and killed their leader by ripping his throat out with his bared teeth. The gorgers backed off and swore fealty in their own animalistic way, and suddenly, Scrag had his own army, and an avenue for vengeance. So when you're in a pretty bad situation like that, you put your alpha male pants on, lead them out of the caves in rebellion against the tribe who shamed you, butcher them all, and offer a gory sacrifice to the Great Maw. His wounds sealed shut, his powers grew immensely, and suddenly, he had the attention of an entity from the warp. On the battlefield, he fights as a whirling dervish of meat cleavers and flesh hooks, ripping and disemboweling enemies to serve as fetishes for gut magic, a shamanic and voodoo-like lore that provides a direct link of power to the Great Maw itself. So not only is he a powerful caster of a very unique lore of magic, he's also quite capable in close quarters combat, with frenzy, terror, and immune to poison, because all butchers and slaughtermasters drink vials of toxins daily as part of their training to build up their tolerance. But the thing that makes him the most unique is his epic cauldron that grants him and all gorgers on the map powerful effects the more he kills. So think of something like a Black Coach, a unit that performs better and better and grants more and more buffs the better Scrag does in melee. At the lowest threshold, Scrag gains health regeneration. At level 2, he and all gorgers on the map get increased melee attack, and at the level 3 threshold, Scrag and all gorgers gain additional weapon damage, and finally, at the highest kill threshold, Scrag becomes unbreakable, and all gorgers gain regeneration. So if CA decided to go balls deep with that mechanic, he'd be an incredibly interesting lord with a very unique playstyle, and as one of 2 lord choices in the Ogre's 8th edition army book, perfectly fits the duality CA likes to go for in terms of picking a melee beatstick and a powerful caster as the 2 starting lords for each race. He's an ogre pimp pope with an absolutely insane and grotesque design, and will bring a lot of meaty flavor to the battlefields of Total War Warhammer 3. Moving on to number 4, we'll be talking about the Demon Binders of Hashut, Father of Darkness, and there is one name amongst the Chaos Dwarf race that stands above all, at least when it comes to their army book, because they only have one playable name character in their most recent edition. But boy, is he a doozy. It's Drazoath the Ashen, Lord of the Black Fortress, commander of the Legion of Asgore. So the Chaos Dwarfs are going to start Warhammer 3's campaign in a manner similar to the Tomb Kings, in that one of their most powerful sub-factions will begin the game in exile and at odds with the capital of Zarnagron. Just like Ark in the Black and the followers of the Gash, Drazowath will have his own slice of the Dawi Zar Empire, and might quickly find himself at war with Astrogoth Ironhand, Zatan the Black, and the Sorcerers of the Tower of Fire. But if any lord in Warhammer 3 is equipped for handling demon, ogre, and greenskin invasions while also dealing with what is effectively a civil war on the home front, it's Drazowath, because he's got maybe the most powerful and fiercely loyal army in the entirety of the Darklands, the Legion of Asgore. They garrison the Black Fortress at the southern borders of the realm, smashing invaders and ensuring the slave trade runs smoothly. Home of the Infernal Guard, the Chaos Dwarf equivalent of Slayers, who sear helmets to their faces in shame and are sealed head to toe in black shard armor, these warriors are sent to the front lines as a kind of phalanx that uses powerful Inferno weaponry and has very resilient shield walls. They've got absolutely nothing to lose, just like their lord, who is also living in exile away from the capital. But what makes Drazowath really unique is a potent combination of magical items, melee prowess, and an insanely powerful mount that would make even the Blood God jealous. He's immune to psychology. After all, not much would really scare you when you've lived in the heart of darkness surrounded by horrifying monstrosities since the Great Catastrophe thousands of years ago. He buffs war machines in the same way that dwarf engineers do, and is a high-level wizard of the lore of Hashut. Like many of the characters you'll be seeing on this list in particular, he has impressive spellcasting capabilities and a strong presence in melee when he wants to get up close and personal. Dark Renown demonstrates his clout and ability as a high-ranking general, granting melee attack bonuses to nearby Chaos Dwarf units, but not their hobgoblin slaves, and his unique mount Cinder Breath is a Bale Taurus, a demonic bull-like dragon of molten lava that deals significant AoE damage to anything that gets near it, kind of like a Mortis engine. Its blazing body will literally melt the weapons of attackers while protecting it from wounds. It has an incredibly damaging breath weapon that will completely decimate legions of infantry or cav alike, and cannot be wounded by flaming spells under any circumstances, period. And in fact, if something like a fireball were to smack it in the face, it would actually heal from that for the exact same amount of damage it would have done otherwise. He has 3 very powerful magic items as well. The Hell Shard Amulet, that gives him a 15% ward save and reflects damage back at attackers. The Demon Spike Crucible, granting a large increase to Winds of Magic pool and recharge rate while also granting bonus damage when attacking enemy casters. And the Graven Scepter, which gives him some juicy combat steroids and armor-piercing buffs when he chooses to activate it. Able to lay down overwhelming infernos with his casting, breath attacks, and vicious CQB capability with one of the most exciting mounts coming in Game 3, I think it's pretty easy to see how Drazowath the Ashen made the cut at the number 4 spot. We're on to the Unholy Triumvirate, and coming in at number 3 is the Vermin Lord who started it all. The Whisper in the Realm of Ruin whose scheming and leadership broke the deadlock at Skavenblight and accomplished the impossible, uniting the Skaven and overwhelming the surface world. It's Screech Vermin King, Avatar of the Great Horned Rat, coming in at number 3. Screech is the greater demon equivalent of the Ruinous Powers, but where the Dark Gods each specialize in one thing or another, the Vermin King is an icon of plague, of Frankenstein ingenuity, of martial skill, warp manipulation, and cloak and dagger tactics. He combines all the best and all the worst attributes of Skavendom because he is Skavendom, the fused, muling bodies of the original Council of 13 transformed into a more pleasing form for Big Daddy Rat. He wields the stealth of Clan Eshin, the arcane talent of the Greyseers, the technological insight of Clan Scryer, the flesh-crafting skills of Clan Molder, the warrior ambition of the Warlord clans, and the burning zeal and corruption of Clan Pestilence. But at the end of the day, is still Skaven at heart, which means he still shares the same fears and ambitions, the morally bankrupt attitude and abject disregard for life that all rat men exhibit. On the tabletop, the Vermin Lord is a level 4 wizard that can bring any combination of the Lords of Ruin and Plague, but must have the dreaded 13th spell. It's a pretty terrible spell in its current form in Warhammer 2, if we're being completely honest, one that needs to be reworked at some point, because it has an obscene Winds of Magic cost and a whole hell of a lot of inefficiency, but on paper, summoning Storm Vermin into the mortal plane is a pretty cool idea. Unfortunately, it's just nowhere near as awesome as it should be, which, if it functioned like it did on the tabletop, would literally turn blocks of enemy infantry into verminous little rat men and sick them on their own faction. I think that'd be a hell of a lot more fun than its current implementation. I would dearly love to see a buddy cop movie with him and Gracie Thankwall at some point. They are hilarious together in the end times when they're working together to work on the doom of man, and doom is what the Vermin King brings in terms of his items and combat prowess. Ruinous Arsenal gives him a Doom Glaive and a Plague Reaper, which he can use interchangeably, granting always strikes first, heavy armor-piercing damage, and poison damage, while Master of Ruin dramatically lowers his miscast chance. As a demon, he's immune to Psych, causes terror, is a large target, has magical attacks, a powerful ward save, and is a towering, imposing model, significantly larger than even a Rat Ogre Bonebreaker, with a stat line that's just as absurd as you would expect from an avatar of one of the strongest races in the entirety of the setting. Screech Vermin King will not be in the game at launch, as CA will more than have their hands full getting the Chaos Dwarfs, Ogres, and Demons up to snuff, but he represents the additional love and, frankly, the power creep I expect to see sometime after launch, as Game 1 and Game 2 races continue to receive content, and the trilogy continues expanding well into the future. Just like Rome 2, Creative Assembly will continue supporting this game years and years after launch day, because they publicly stated their intention to do so, and frankly, the game's kind of a cash cow. They're not going to just abandon it as soon as they can. As a being of malevolence forged from some of the most powerful Lords of Decay, it shouldn't really come as a surprise that Vermin Lord avatars have some of the most insane designs, stat lines, and special rules of any Lord characters in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. And though they can't lead armies in the tabletop, in the lore, they most certainly do, and are the impetus for many of the cataclysms that befall the forces of order as the end approaches. And Screech Vermin King is the lord of them all, the avatar of Scavendom. A kiss of contagion on your cheek. Generous gifts to you enhance your physique. The great unclean ones are coming soon. Blessings of the Rotfather be upon them, and those who ride out to meet them in battle. The forces of Nurgle have a gigantic disease role to play in Warhammer 3's campaign, so it's only fitting that the greatest of their kind will lead the Poxlord's demonic forces into battle once more. Kugath Plaguefather is coming in hot at number 2, and truly, he embodies everything that Nurgle adores as the fetid brewmaster and chosen unclean one of chaos. Shall we say the demonic anchor of the unwashed masses. Everything about Kugath Plaguefather is hilarious, over the top, and disgusting. Even amongst a species that is designed as a pure reflection of Nurgle's personality and physical characteristics, Kugath is the most alike to his patron god, a mad scientist ever searching for the most potent diseases to unleash on his enemies. He's friendly and paternal in the same sadistic way all great unclean ones are, and rides a massive palanquin throne into battle, borne aloft by a horde of Nurglings, lesser demons of Nurgle. Surrounded by his experiments, he mixes and dishes like an Avicii concert, playing the tunes of rot and decay as living flesh withers and dies in an aura around him. His special rules are some of the most unique and hilarious in the entirety of the Demons of Chaos army book. Slime Trail is the wake of poop and pus he leaves as he walks, ensuring he doesn't take morale hits or combat malices from behind when he gets attacked in the rear, because he doesn't care. He's a big fat Nurgle boy. He's essentially an invulnerable wall of wart flesh that feels no pain and certainly feels no fear. The Nurglings that carry his throne into battle multiply and swarm at his feet, allowing him to summon meat shields of little rat demons that nibble and gnaw at anyone who gets near, and he heals them all in an AoE as they take damage, on top of his already incredible mastery of the lore of Nurgle. Hands down, my favorite part of this character, though, is his ability to take the nasty little Nurglings that suckle his flesh and hurl them across the battlefield like a catapult, smashing enemy formations from long range and coating them with poison and bile. Once up close and personal, though, opponents are confronted by a 30 feet tall, massively tanky spellcaster covered with swarms of flies that deals damage in an AoE and lowers melee attack of those who get close. When you take an incredibly tanky Greater Demon and give it that much utility, pooping out Nurglings, throwing them Hail Mary style like Aaron Rodgers, and supporting the hordes with potent magics, you can expect Kugath Plaguefather to be one of the premier legendary lords in Warhammer 3, and visually about as visceral and grotesque and horrifying as a creature can possibly get. Would not want to run into that bad boy in the dark corners of the Warhammer Fantasy Battle universe. If you can dodge a wrench, You can dodge a Nurgling, but you won't escape that smell. That stuff stays with you. And finally, coming in at number 1, this spot could belong to no other. It's the Big Boner, the spooky scary in chief, the great necromancer, and cause of oh so much that went wrong with the Warhammer world. Gash, supreme lord of undeath. Behold, he who shall not be named, as Peter Pettigrew, Manchild, awakens a walking legend. If obscure characters like Count Noctilus, Aranus Saltspite, and God forbid Silastra Direfin are being pulled from their watery graves or out of thin air to join the cast of Warhammer 3 in a minor faction that, well, truly had very little lore in the Vampire Coast, do you honestly believe the greatest necromancer and undead threat in the history of the planet will be forgotten in this trilogy? The answer is no. We will see Nagash in Warhammer 3. Probably not on launch, but not incredibly long after. Nagash is arguably the most well-rounded character in the entirety of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. An absolute terror in every single aspect of the game, and an insanely cool model to boot. As you might expect, incredibly expensive to field, but as befitting of the one true necromancer, he's a godlike spellcaster, a godlike melee combatant, a legendary lord who can summon legions of undead with the flick of a finger, and buff up his armies in every facet they could ever want. In fact, he's so powerful, he's a level 5 wizard on a chart that only goes up to level 4. He has access to death, light, Nehakaran, vampiric, and undead magic, and can take any combination of spells from any of those lores, one for each of the 9 books of Nagash. This is a character who can summon entire units of zombies, skeletons, Graveguard, direwolves, fellbats, Tomb King's chariots, Ushabti, Black Knights, and even Necropolis Knights. A towering giant of a skeleton with a stat line to make even greater demons blush, and insane items that round out any role you want to throw him into. Want to buff up his already top tier casting? Equip Alakanash, the Staff of Power, granting him huge magic reserves and recharge rate, essentially greater arcane conduit, and maybe even better than that. Give him Heroic Killing Blow, a huge combat steroid that gave him a chance to one-shot monsters and constructs on the tabletop. Honestly, doesn't have my favorite implementation in Total War, but a hefty bonus versus large could fulfill a somewhat similar role as was originally intended. Not a big fan of the 40% weapon damage buff that it's currently implemented as. Give him Morricane, the Black Armor, granting 30% physical resist, and Zephit Nebtar, the Mortis Blade, a dueling weapon that makes him hit on par with Bloodthirsters and Everchosens. Nagash is a character that has no easily exploited weaknesses. No chinks in that proverbial or physical armor, just an obscene cost for an obscene legendary lord who will be the major late game threat to the Greenskins, Dwarfs, and Tomb Kings at the southern portion of Mortal Empire's map. And more than anything, he represents the force of nature the undead truly are. Armageddon, sweeping from the south, while the demons close in from the north, and the Skaven emerge from their tunnels below. But fear not, the good guys will have lots of tools to push back the tides of chaos, and the forces of evil come Game 3, and the mighty Bear of Kislev will be on the front line in this War of Worlds when Total War Warhammer 3 makes landfall sometime next year. I fully expect to see Kislev as one of the starting playable races come whenever this game comes out. Hope you guys enjoyed this look at some of the craziest legendary lords on the board come the end of this Warhammer Fantasy Battle Trilogy. Let me know if you agreed with the list and who else should be included, which characters you're most excited to see, and make the jump from tabletop to video game form, and I'll see you all in the next video. Indie Prime, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.